To North Vietnamese leaders, the latest battles were proof that the Americans would not use their air power to defend South Vietnam. There was also good news from the Soviet Union, the promise of huge quantities of extra weapons and supplies. The Soviets were keen to increase their influence in the region and believed they were backing a winner. Even though North Vietnam now had the support it needed, its leaders still meant to move cautiously. But General Tran Van Tra, the commander in charge of Southern forces, pushed for decisive action. Once more, he won agreement for a sizable attack, but not for a full-scale campaign. On March 1st, 1975, the attack planned by General Tran Van Tra was unleashed in the Central Highlands. The new South Vietnamese strategy was to hold all of the country below the town of Tuy Ha. Areas previously held by the North Vietnamese would be retaken. Above Tuy Ha, a series of defense lines would be created north and west of Hue, Da Nang, Quang Ngai, and Quy Nhon. If need be, the lines could be abandoned one after the other in an orderly withdrawal until a solid defense could be mounted. This latest North Vietnamese attack had begun with diversionary actions against the strategic cities of Pleiku and Kon Tum. But the real target to capture was Ban Mi Thuet, and the attack began on March 10th. The Southern 23rd Division mounted a counterattack, but failed hopelessly when South Vietnamese planes scored a direct hit on their own divisional operations center, ending any organized defense. A new plan was then put into effect. South Vietnamese army units in Kon Tum and Pleiku provinces were ordered to withdraw to the coast and hold Tuy Ha along Route 7B. Meanwhile, the North Vietnamese army launched a second major attack. 100,000 men converged on the major cities of Quang Tri, Hue, and Da Nang. They were spearheaded by powerful armored forces and backed by 8 full regiments of artillery. And when news of the debacle in the Central Highlands reached these cities, panic set in. Worse still, the South Vietnamese Elite Airborne Division, based north of Hue, was ordered to return to Saigon. The North Vietnamese plan was to attack from 3 directions. They meant to drive Southern forces back to Da Nang. There, the enemy would be trapped and destroyed. Quang Tri province was quickly captured, followed by the town of Tam Kỳ to the south. Refugees surged along Route 1 towards Da Nang. At the same time, the NVA advance threatened to cut Route 1. South Vietnamese army units were now ordered to abandon Hue and Chu Lai and retreat to Da Nang. On March 25, 1975, Hue, South Vietnam's 3rd largest city, fell to the North Vietnamese army. North Vietnamese rocket and artillery fire was slamming into the built-up areas and the docks. Fleets of ships and small boats crammed the harbor, and there was a frantic scramble for places. Thousands drowned or were crushed. Many were shot by troops or armed civilians in the desperate competition to escape. As 30,000 North Vietnamese troops advanced south to Da Nang, the South Vietnamese command ordered all its troops to be evacuated by sea. In the chaos, few succeeded in escaping. The scenes of panic and mayhem at the docks were repeated at Da Nang's airport. Over the next few days, the NVA just rolled into town after town without a fight, towns abandoned by the South Vietnamese forces. On March 30th, 1975, the North Vietnamese Army took Da Nang. It was just over 10 years since the first U.S. Marines had stormed ashore there. By early 1975, 5 weeks into its campaign, the North Vietnamese Army had made stunning gains. "12 provinces and more than 8 million people were under their control. The South Vietnamese Army had lost its best units, over a third of its men, and almost half its weapons. Northern leaders were astonished by their own success. The question now was, could they press ahead and take the capital, Saigon, in a war-winning blow? Originally, they had not planned to get this far until 1976, but now it would have to be done within 3 weeks, before the rainy season disrupted operations. The job of commanding the offensive was that of General Van Tien Dung. His deputy was General Tran Van Tra, the man whose aggressive strategy had opened the way to Saigon. Le Duc Tu, Henry Kissinger's adversary in the Paris peace talks, now one of the most powerful men in the Northern Politburo, would oversee the whole effort, accompanied by General Giap. The final offensive was named the Ho Chi Minh Campaign. For the assault, the NVA deployed 250,000 men and hundreds of tanks. The troops were superbly equipped and supported by massed artillery. And as they advanced south, they made use of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment abandoned by the South Vietnamese. Behind them was a vast and sophisticated supply system. North Vietnamese transport aircraft and ships were now ferrying men and materials into captured airfields and ports in South Vietnam.